involved in mobile, what you need to be aware of to help your company grow as best you can. So many of you were at the Lunch and Learn earlier today, so I hope you found it informative. To complement that, we're going to have a really good panel here. So we have some of the best minds in mobile, people who have really good experience in growing products from scratch, as well as people who are working in marketing strategy, product development. We kind of run the gamut. So I think the best way to start, Ryan here is co-founder and partner of Sprinkle, which is a really good growth strategy shop for young companies pre-seed. And I'll just kind of let everyone kind of go down the line and introduce themselves, but it's going to be a panel, open-ended. Ryan will spend maybe half hour, 45 minutes asking questions. It'll be very conversational, and then we'll just open it up to Q&A. So thanks.
Yeah, right on. Thanks everyone for coming. Stoked to be here. I'm Ryan, like you said. Sprinkle is sort of this marketing dev shop team. We're actually killing it because we relaunched something new called Camp, and it's an incubator. So if you guys have ideas, that's exactly what we're looking for. We take founders that are first time, most of the time, in college, just out of college, considering even going to college, and we help them build their products, take them to market, do your legal work, and pay for everything. It's pretty cool. So check it out, sprinklecamp.com. Next batch is in October. Everyone here, I could introduce them. I've looked them all up, stalked them today. Probably botched a little bit. We'll just do a quick one-liner down the lane.
Yeah, sure. I'm Adam Hattie. I used to run marketing over at Topps, like trading card company. Got a suite of apps there. And I just recently started this month at Draft, which is a daily fantasy sports app.
Hi, I'm John Lamberdays. I'm the VP of Business Development for a digital marketing company.
I'm Susie. I work with Maven, which is actually downstairs in the GCT Accelerator. We are a digital health clinic for women, so we do video appointments with women's health experts. I do product development and user management.
I'm Matt Steve. I run the product team at the National Hockey League. I used to be at ESPN. I started at the Hockey League about 18 months ago, and I oversee pretty much all our apps, 20 to 30 club apps, the league app, and then some of our kind of like OTT platforms, like Apple TV and the website.
Right on. So I want to kind of break this conversation into two halves. First half being the way John described it on the event page, actually, the state of mobile, which sounds kind of abstract. And then I want to go into growth particularly. To ease into the state of mobile, I want to ask a question that isn't super relevant actually to all of you guys, because all of you guys have mobile apps out, and you're kind of in like the dot release mode of your app. But I think the question that maybe people here would have is like, when you want to build an app, like imagine you were back in the early days, Susie, launching Maven, right? Or anyone here, if you have side projects and apps you've worked in the past, like you build an app, you test it, you give everyone, like all your friends test flight, you bug them to download all the latest updates, it breaks, finally the App Store approves it, and you go live. What do you do the day your app goes live? Like, what is the strategy? How has that changed? Because personally, I'm not a huge mobile growth guy. Worked in mobile apps, I really love web apps though. And I've heard a lot of kind of banter about how to go about like day one, day zero of a mobile app, particularly where to release it. So one thing a lot of people may not know that's interesting is, iTunes, you can segment your app release the same way if you're a musician, I can say, only show my stuff in Japan, and it's regional. And I've heard a lot of people talk about launching apps in New Zealand and hitting the charts somewhere kind of foreign first and then going local. And how do you deal with that? I know you guys are in like the dot release mode, but how do you deal with that when you launch an app?
So for us, because we're healthcare specifically, we're kind of a marketplace model whereby we have health providers across the board in most of the states in America. So while we are available internationally, we're focused very much on launch on the US market. That's where our health providers are licensed, particularly kind of state-by-state boundaries whereby you can't, as a nurse practitioner, prescribe in another state, for example. So we're very conscious of making sure we kind of focus on launch actually around 5 or 6 states, and then kind of being in the rest of the US and kind of a less effective, so we'll roll out gradually.
Yeah. So what do you guys do with kind of, like she mentioned, geographical limitations to your app? Like I talked to a lot of people who are running like roommate apps, and they're only in New York City forever. I talk to people running apps that connect homeowners with contractors, right? And they're only in LA forever. What do you do with users that aren't your ideal user, not because they're not qualified or some sales term doesn't match, but because they're physically not where your users are? How do you deal with that? What do you do with those guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like for us, we tackle geo and from like a U.S., Canada, international perspective because most of what we do, rights drives a lot of how we can sell the product. So like I'd say we have just like a lot of legal constraints there. But as far as strategically how you could approach something that's outside of the market, I mean, I think that comes into researching when do you attack that market, right? And I think that's probably like, as you see how you fit, you have product market fit in market one, like you can think about where you can expand, what's your next logical step.
Sorry, one quick request. We got an intake here that's really loud, so can we just ask you guys to speak up for the people in the back?
Sure thing. So, Susie, you've got the mobile app. I checked it out. I'm not a woman,
Did you book?
but I get it. And I've been locked out of so many mobile apps I've tried to try because they're for women.
You can book if you want to. We're not discriminating at all.
Where do you see, and I don't mean to ask an existential question, but I was looking at Matt's background and what he's doing at NHL, and particularly the term cross-platform came up in your bio, right? Because you have different experiences. You have a web experience, you have a mobile web experience, you have an app. You have an app for different types of devices. And I was talking a little bit before with John about this. Where do you guys see the future, in the very general sense, of mobile and its place in what a product is? And is mobile like an entry point to like one platform? You have a product that lets people like connect this dot to that or connect to a physician. Or is mobile kind of the point? Is the context part of the experience, or is the context like hitting in the way of the experience? Because we're just now entering the age of mobile apps having the same features, being as feature rich as a web app, and for years that just wasn't the case. You needed to like change your password, you logged in on the website. If you wanted to just like talk to someone, you used the mobile app. And with you being mobile, are you like mobile centric, mobile first? Is that the point? Is there a space for a web app? Would that ruin the experience? And with you, are you doing the opposite where you're trying to build one coherent experience across all platforms, and mobile is like an entry point?
I mean, essentially for us, we're about making healthcare accessible for women. When we first thought of the idea, there was definitely a decision made as to whether to go iOS first, whether to go desktop web first. Basically, we chose iOS because we're a video product, and trying to get a video product working successfully across everything from Internet Explorer 6 to IE 11 to Firefox to Chrome to this crazy ecosystem was just a massive lift for a new startup. Like we're a small dev team which didn't have the resources to build something like that with day zero. Whereas iOS, we can kind of lock it down a lot more. We have a smaller ecosystem. We can really sort of control how we got it out there. Just like we could sort of release in one country, release in another country later. We can lock it down to iOS 8 only, so we know that our devices have a certain number of specifications. So that was basically our decision around launching iOS. That said, we're building web now, we're building iOS now, which leaves me on very nicely being as an iOS developer, we're hiring, and as an Android developer, we're hiring. So we're definitely not totally only focused on the mobile web. Like it was our first kind of port of call because it's accessible for everyone, but equally we know people are going to have healthcare experiences in different settings. If you're a mom with a kid, you're probably going to have your kid in one hand, you're going to have your phone in the other. It's not as easy to be typing on a desktop computer. But we want to give flexibility, so we will absolutely be going all platforms as you expect.
Gotcha.
Yeah, for us, I mean, you kind of nailed it. When I started at the NHS, I started about 18 months ago, and we had a real shitty app. And I realized the first thing that we had to do was redo it from the ground up. And what I realized was that, like, you step into a company, you have one chance to prove, like, here's your value, and what can you do for this company, right? And so I used our iOS app and our Android app to drive, like, where the entire direction of where we're going to go. And that is exactly what you said. It's a familiar experience on the couch, in the arena for the hockey fans so that they can stay up to date and watch hockey wherever they are, whenever they want. So how do we kind of like break that down in different phases? Our kind of core value proposition is video. When we see users come into the app, watch a video, we retain them like 70% more successfully than we do just a regular free user who never accesses a game recap highlight or anything like that. So we drove part of our strategy around video, around obviously like personalization of what club do you follow, and then who are some players that you have an affinity to, right? We could just simply ask you in onboarding, okay, where are you from, who do you like, and who are some favorite players, right? But we realized that there's a way that we can kind of gather this information. Number one, we can like figure out what videos you like, see if you have an affinity to a particular video channel. You can favorite that video channel. You can obviously favorite a team, and then you know what, when All-Star time comes around, you want to say, here are the people I think should be involved in the All-Star game. We'll take that, put it on your profile, and make sure that that information carries across all platforms.
Yeah, so I find both of those very interesting, that they have, you know, very specific business objectives, and you both said video, right? So, you know, the mobile device is just perfect for video right now, and it actually makes it kind of easy, like you said. But I think that to answer your question, you have to kind of look at, you know, again, what are your core business objectives? And if you're in digital marketing, if you're trying to market a product or a service that's going to have a much bigger life cycle, then mobile is only a piece of it, right? It's a very valuable piece of it, but you've got to make sure that you know exactly where it fits. And it's not the end-all be-all for all things digital and all things digital marketing. So you've got to make sure that your web experience is there. Where's the consumer in the buying life cycle, and what do they use the mobile device for in that piece of the buying life cycle?
And here's probably my last question. We'll make it less than half on mobile in general, and then go straight into growth, because I think that would be really interesting. That would be more anecdotes to share. But this question is kind of to start with you, John. You know, when you look at technology and you look at frameworks, you look at something like Rails or Angular, it sounds silly because we know we can kind of build whatever using whatever. That's bastardized summarization, right? But we kind of know we can build whatever with whatever. And yet, when you look at apps, if you look at like an app built in Rails, if you code in Rails, you can kind of tell it's built in Rails. You can even go to like an error page and see that it's like the Rails error page. You can tell where it's hosted, like if it's the Roku error page, you can kind of just tell. And that's a relatively new thing where we're seeing this like homogeneity of frameworks and how apps look. Do they use head nav or side nav? It's like weird components. But when we look at mobile, that's actually sort of how it started, because you've got a lot of restrictions from iOS more so than Android. You've got the native elements, and you can go off on your own, and you can build your own popovers and your own border radiuses and all these things. But ultimately, like, the user is getting so used to the native iOS pop-up, the native back button, the hamburger menu in the top right, the gear cog to mean settings. And if you go away from that, you may actually, hurt the engagement score, effectively, of your app. And I'm curious what you guys think. I think particularly you, John, because I was looking into what you were doing at eCal, and I looked into the enterprise tier you have for your product, where you white label and you brand your apps specific to a client. And you're kind of going against the grain of like what we just described, where you're like, hey, you want a custom experience, we'll give it to you, no problem. And how are you like riding the balance there between keeping a positive user experience that's intuitive, that's what people are used to with the other 150 apps on their phone that they've had for 5 years, versus giving them a custom UI, which even on the web we're starting to see drift towards like three different areas.
Yeah, so I mean it's difficult, right? And it's kind of an art form versus a science. And you've got to make sure that you're not going too far off the reservation, or it won't be usable for people, and people won't, they just won't adapt it. But what we're doing is a brand new digital channel, so there's a lot of market making, there's a lot of evangelism that goes into it, and we're not an app. We're not an app specific. We drive traffic to apps, to websites, wherever the marketers want to send their traffic. So, but I think you just have to be real careful not to go too far out of bounds. There are certain trends that people want and that they want for a reason, because they're good trends and they work, and you just have to be careful. So I think the app developers would probably have a lot better take on that.
Well, what do you think, Adam? Because Adam's at playdraft.com, kind of a different experience for fantasy sports. You have all the major sports. There are several fantasy offerings in the market, so you're competing against potentially what we just described, elements to like mobile apps and the buttons we expect and where we expect it to be, but also gets the other experiences of other, I don't want to say similar products, but other virtual sports components. And how do you like navigate that? How do you do usability testing? How do you?
Well, I guess right off the bat, yeah, we're competing against two big giants in our industry, DraftKings and FanDuel. You know, I shouldn't say competing because we don't really view them as direct competition, and they definitely don't view us as competition. But we're taking the approach of, you know, that we're mobile first. And so, you know, while those are two great services, they're really desktop services that we migrated to mobile. So we think we have an advantage from having, you know, we are cross-platform across many different places. You know, we're iOS now and Android hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So that's really, I mean, we're building a very mobile, it's a native mobile experience, and that's what it is for us. That's a possible advantage for us.
Let's dive into some growth stuff. I think this will be really interesting.
Actually, Ryan, can I jump in?
Yeah, sure, please.
Sorry. I want to say one thing just to close out, kind of like what we were talking about before about just the handsets being, right, is this the starting point, is this the jumping point? It certainly is for most people. I think, so in our .1 release that we're doing for the start of this season, the main thing we're building is Chromecast support. Fans have been bitching that they want it for a long time, and it's our bad, you know, not getting it in there or not having the resources to get it in there. But I think that just goes to prove that like this thing is going to run the living room one day. You see people like, or it could. It has the potential, right? We don't know what Apple's cooking up for later this fall, but I think it's clear that like that type of model definitely works. And then kind of like on that navigation piece, like this is something that, you know, I've personally, having been in mobile product for a long time, watched mature. Like Facebook launched the hamburger menu, and then everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna make a hamburger menu," and then everyone realized, well, it sucks because your app is completely one-dimensional. You can't do two things at once, right? You can't expose other content, you know, via different tabs. So I think like just if you are starting from ground zero, like make sure you truly think about what you want to offer up to the user and how you should navigate. In certain cases, hamburger menu makes complete sense, right? But I think it was a trend that emerged and people jumped on it without really thinking through what their use cases were.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because you mentioned as a mobile app, people want Chromecast, they want to throw their sports and experiences and clips and whatever on the screen. So in a way, does that mean that they want a better or more robust mobile app, or does it mean they want a Roku app, right? And giving them Chromecast support is just another way to kind of, your app is now, and again, I'm not going to name the app, I'm just riffing here, that we sometimes build extensions of our apps, or we build a Chrome extension versus like the native app, the web version versus the desktop app, just to find that there are means to an end to what the user really wanted. Do they really want it in their pocket, or do they want it on a huge screen after they've like taken their shoes off after dinner, right? And sometimes we have to build the thing they don't want to find out what to do, which is pretty interesting. Let's jump.
But they want both, right?
Yeah, or they want both.
Right. You have no, you know, while they're riding home on the train, they want it in their pocket, and then as soon as they get home, you know, and that's what we were talking about earlier, that it's, you know, there's no one size fits all, so that's why you're having to,
Sure.
you're having to try to reach as many of the bases as you can.
Sure.
I think the device is kind of becoming secondary to the experience. We'll kind of expect to be able to do what they do on their phone, on their laptop, on whatever the device they have, on their tablet, on their screen, whatever. Like they expect the product they have to work equally well, equally seamlessly across whatever they're doing. I mean, it used to be a really segmented experience. If you looked at the mobile site, you have like half the information is what you had on your desktop site. You essentially have to click new proper site to see what you wanted to see. Whereas now, like one of the great things about mobile is it's kind of forced desktop products and larger form factor products to kind of reconsider how they're architecting information. Like mobile apps force you to get the best information in the cleanest way possible, rather than just bombarding every inch of the screen. And that's kind of translated up through all the screen sizes. And that's
Yep. Totally.
And that's been kind of a marriage between advancements in the technology and mobile first development and design, actually, mobile first design to figure out what you're trying to accomplish.
So let's jump into growth. I want to start with the most basic kind of strategy that anyone here who is building a mobile app or has mobile apps probably has, or is figuring out how to build it. And I want to see if these guys can breathe some fresh air into this one tactic for mobile growth, which is the Find My Friends widget. You open the app, sometimes it's aggressive, like you haven't even signed up yet. It says, author your calendars, right? Author your contact address book, tweet this. Like, I don't even know what it looks like yet. What am I gonna tell my friends? But the Find My Friends mechanism has proved really successful for some startups, some apps. Some people have even written case studies that they owe their entire success to the Find My Friends mechanism. Some people, it's just like collecting dust in their hamburger menu, and no one uses it. And so, why is that? I'm always looking in the space for new marketing automation tools, new SDKs, new widgets, and so I got to know John. And a couple that come to mind are like YesGraph and ShuttleCloud. I used to work at ShuttleCloud, so I said the competitor first. And what they do is it's like a Find My Friends on crack. So instead of just authoring your contact book and showing everyone ABC order, you author contact book and it shows you the top 10 friends that are most likely to actually download the app if you text them. It's kind of interesting. And there's a sort of 2.0 that I sense happening to that classic Find My Friends. Curious what you guys think. I'm sure you guys have Find My Friends in your mobile apps. Do people use it? Why not?
Well, actually, right now, appropriately enough, we're actually integrating branch metrics into Graph right now. So shout out to Branch. And for us, there's we're banking on it. That's going to be a really big part of it. That's actually a differentiator for us compared to the other fantasy sites and most fantasy leagues, which are you versus 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people. We're head to head, and so that friend component is critical to our survival. And with that, we're offering referral bonuses, much like the other guys, and we're able to do that. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that using Branch. So that's as simple as you generate a link, and through that link, when somebody installs, we can immediately recognize where they came from, immediately put you in a draft versus the user who referred you to begin with, and credit that user with something in their account, whether it be $1, $10, or whatever it is. And so that allows us to, the Find My Friend there it allows us to just create a much better experience for you right off the bat. You don't need to go through onboarding if your friend is referring you to the game. Your friend's probably told you what it's all about. So the first thing you should be doing is playing against your friend, and then if you want to find out stuff later, go for it. So for us, Branch is making that possible through friend referral versus, there's other ways to do this through ads, for example, and finding out, oh, this guy came from Facebook or this guy came from this website. But for us, knowing which friend sent you is super important. It kind of compared to our
So that's super interesting because when you mentioned that you wouldn't have to go through the regular onboarding if you were referred, it kind of makes onboarding seem like a bug. Why would anyone want to onboard, right? And none of us want to onboard. We want to just say go, open sesame and then give me access to your app. I don't want to author my Gmail. I don't want to come up with a password. Especially don't want to come up with a password that needs 3 numbers and 2 special characters because that's different from my regular password, which is bananas.
We're typing twice.
It actually is another fruit. Yeah, do it twice. So this idea of removing onboarding can itself be a growth strategy. So if you look at product time, and I kind of hate that people just talk about product time all the time, but I'm going to talk about it. If you're on product time and you've made something or you're ordained or whatever, you can comment and do more than just upload, and you can post. And a lot of people can't do that. So that is kind of an onboarding thing. To onboard to product time, to be able to comment, you have to be a maker, or you have to have anointed or whatever. So what you have, because of that, are people tweeting every 30 seconds, does anyone have at product time invites so that I can be anointed? And you have people talking about it because they're trying to work around this quote unquote onboarding that's forced to them otherwise. And by having this on your product, I wonder if, and again, radical idea, riffing and bud lighting, but if your onboarding was so shitty intentionally that I download Draft and I want to play and ask me all these questions, it's or you could just ask if a friend can invite you and goes directly with them. And maybe I'll start tweeting about you guys simply because I don't want to go through the process. It's this ironic growth tactic, essentially. What do you guys think? You guys have Find My Friends?
We don't, but I think it's super interesting. Like you said, it's critical to it's critical to your business, right? Like I think your whatever your find friends tactic is, it's got to do three things. Number one, it's got to make you either look smart or provide some real function. Second, it's got to give the user who you're sending it to something, and three, it's got to give you something.
We don't have it in our app.
Why not?
I mean, it's healthcare. It's a difficult balance to strike, essentially. I mean, if you've had a great appointment with an OBGYN, you're probably not going to want to share that with your whole contact book or with your Facebook book necessarily. But equally, there's an argument that if you've had a great appointment with a great practitioner, like we've heard from user research, people want to share. They want to share this great person they have. So we've moved away from a kind of like Uber style give 10, get 10 model to more of like a refer this person. Like I had a great experience with this person, like I'm personally recommending you.
Yep.
Rather than kind of like we don't need to sort of user network to start off with kind of a marketplace model.
Yep.
But we're certainly moving more towards kind of like this is a personal referral. Like I had a great experience with this person. I think it's better than you. Rather than kind of just find the address book and get as many of my friends as possible. We're still learning some big things out of that.
Yeah, the way I think about sharing to other users sharing to users at the very highest level is in a B2B versus a B2C context. And I like to blog, I'm not very good at it, but I wrote a blog post a long time ago called The Problem with Great Products. And I basically said that if you're B2B and you identify an awesome tool that saves you time, that makes fewer headaches, that gets more users quicker, cheaper, faster, whatever, then you're kind of incentivized not to share it. Because it's like you basically just found a lottery on a private island that you win every time you pull it. It's like either it's broken or not enough people play and you just keep winning. Why would you tell your friends? And that's kind of the problem with the sharing aspect of B2B. It's like it's a competitive edge. You don't tell other people a competitive edge or it no longer becomes your edge. Like secret hiding places aren't, right? But then in the consumer context, consumers like love to chat about stuff because a lot of times consumer products create network effects and it's actually better the more people use it. So I would say all of that to challenge you potentially. Maybe it isn't find my friends off my contacts in the hamburger menu, collecting dust, but maybe it's after I've just finished a session and you give me like a quick 5-star and I can click a star, and if I said 5, it says X. Can you tell one friend? Do you know one friend? Could you leave a review for us? It doesn't have to be off contact book. It can be, can you go to our app store? And there's a lot to be said about like the net promoter method and identifying the detractors from the promoters as a screen, and then after you've identified someone's a 10 out of 10, they're an evangelist, give them something to do, and they'll do it because they want to. Because people love to talk about stuff that helps them if they know it helps someone else, unless they're a business. That's just my opinion. It's true.
I think that's a great tactic. I think you can also, like, on the flip side, learn from the people who give you 1 star too. Like, rather than getting them to the app store, like put a field up and take that feedback directly. It's something that we've done. It's helped us a ton.
Yeah. I want to ask a really silly question that I think about a lot. Maybe it's something I should write a bad blog post about, which is when you think about your mobile app or the mobile app you want to build, and you think about people using it, and we are all familiar with the R method, activation, acquisition, retention, referral, revenue, whatever, right? And those are the 5 kind of components on your matrix of what's new throughout. And they're pretty intuitive to understand. But when we think about retention and engagement, of like, do they use my app? Do they use it again? And we can call that like the toothbrush test, right? Like, brush your teeth every day. Do they only use my app like once a year? Is it like the vacation test? But I think about another layer to engagement and retention, which is the context of that engagement or retention. And the simplest way I could decipher that to ask you guys about is, do people use your app at their desk or do they use it on the toilet, right? And how does that change everything? How does that affect your brand? How does that affect maybe even like the ROI or the ARPU, like the average revenue you can get from a user, whether they're using it in the bathroom or at their desk? Because we're at our desk 8 hours a day, we're in the bathroom like hopefully not more than like 30 minutes a day. But when we're in our bathroom, we're engaged. When we're at our desk, we're distracted. When we're in our bathroom, are we in buying mode? But when we're in our desk, we're distracted. There's a lot of interesting things that I think about with the apps that I use on my phone. I use Quora, right? I love Quora. I love reading like about, I don't know, prison on Quora. Just fascinated with prison. Hope I never go. Fascinated. And I read about prison in the bathroom, But I don't go on Quora at my office because I have better stuff to do. And I'm curious how you guys feel about your apps. Have you ever think about it that way in that context? Because that could actually, the same way you said, mobile and the restrictions of the screen have forced kind of functions followed form or whatever on the website. I wonder if that context of when people are using your app, because it's in their pocket, because they can technically use it anywhere, they can use it while they're paragliding, right? How does that change how you build your product, what it looks like, how it behaves?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I feel like I'm talking a lot. So it totally changed how we think about building our product. So we used to have this app that all it did was jumped in the scoreboard every time you went in, and to us we were missing this entire the entire day for when you could be potentially consuming like hockey news. And so we built some really complex logic around day parting for both like our scores page and for the app in general. And so like during the day, when you log in, you're on the latest page, what we call our latest page, which is basically like an Instagram newsfeed of hockey content that you can super quickly breeze through. And even though we knew that we were going to lose basically like some time spent, it didn't really matter. Like let's get people in, let's get them engaged in what they're looking for. And then an hour before game time on any day, we take them into the scoreboard and we assume they're looking for scores, read previews, catch scores, look at videos, stuff like that. So totally, yeah, completely changed. Yeah, another kind of design decision we made very early on was that every single score, because we knew video was our main value prop, every score box that we showed people or scorecard, it was going to have a video on it, and it was going to be the most up-to-date video about that game. So that was just like working with a team of editors and making sure that like we were timely, relevant, keeping engagement.
Yeah, I mean, it goes right back to core business objectives, right? Your core business objectives of getting a hockey fan a score and a video is much different than your core objective of someone needing to find a doctor, right? I mean, they're just totally different users. So I think the biggest thing is really knowing who your user is, what's going to drive them, and where they're going to, whether they're going to want to do it in private or in public or, at their desk or on their couch.
What do you think? You have basically a game, right? It's a game. People take it very seriously. It's like sports are like the most interesting game in that no one who's into it thinks it's a game. It's life or death. And how do you do that? You have your best user is like an evangelist who doesn't think it's a game, who would rather be late to work than miss like their moves, right? And how do you cater to them? How do you know when to bug them? How do you give yourself permission to talk to them Monday morning versus like Tuesday night?
Well, it's a bit of a challenge for us because while we're pretty much as simple of a fantasy app as you can really create, there's still multiple points to draft it. It's not like your season-long drafts, but something compared to our competitors where you can draft the whole team right away and it's an individual action. This is dependent on your friends, dependent on their moves. With us, I draft 5 players, you draft 5 players, but we do so interchangeably. So I need to wait for your move. So a draft, and that's something that we're discussing right now internally is do we leave 1 minute between picks or do we leave 10 minutes between picks? What's ultimately going to create a better user experience? And that's it's a challenge, especially since we're an app where we want people in every single day. Every single day there's new events, even throughout the day. I mean, if you miss the baseball games in the afternoon, we still want you in that night. And so again with push notifications, that's always like a controversial thing. How often do you do them? But that's something that we're just still learning. When I was working at Tops, we just simply bombarded it. I mean, we were a whale-based business in that we had in-app purchases. This is for digital trading cards, and we would depend on a very, very small amount of our users for the vast majority of our revenue. And the fact is, push notifications pissed off most of our users, but the users who really mattered to us, the users who were carrying our entire business, loved our push notifications because it was. If they missed out on a card release, they would be furious. And so, that's kind of, that's something that's the business decision we have to make, where, you've got to parse down and segment down your data in terms of, okay, these users hate it, but these users matter.
Yeah.
what that all comes down to, monitoring technology and as things evolve, doing the hyper-personalization and being able to bombard those whales that want it, right? And back off of the guys that are your weekend warrior kind of things. So that's the same thing. It's kind of the same thing with the video, right? It's the marriage of it. Monitoring the tech, being sure that you're trying to be a leader in the space and monitoring where it is today, where it's going tomorrow, and how you can best capitalize.
Yeah, what I sense is this like career cliche turned to mobile apps, which is build the app that for the users that you want, not the users you have, in a way. Back to my Quora example, I've been reading a lot for a couple of years in Quora, but I also recently started writing answers. And I'm writing answers, you're getting upvotes, people see your answers, it kind of grows exponentially is the idea. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago when I was getting, like, let's say, 100 plus views a day across all of my stupid answers, that I got a ping like every night at 10 p.m. You've had, notification, you've had 138 views on your answers today. And it wasn't until like I bridged over that inflection point of like 100 views that they even bothered to tell me. And it's almost like maybe they knew to tell me because if I'm getting that many views, then obviously I'm invested in this platform. I want to write answers. I want people to read it. And they're telling me, they're assuming that I'm a quantified self fan. And when I was getting subbed that, it was this component of like, don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Don't tell me at midnight I got 12 views if like I spent 3 hours on that question, right? So it's kind of interesting. With your push notification dilemma, it's always a dilemma. Push notifications are getting better and better. There's Kahuna, there's all these apps that are getting really great at logic for push. But the easier it is to annoy people, the easier it is to annoy people. Yeah. Let's talk about, so back to like those pillars of growth, activation, acquisition, all that stuff. I wanted to ask Susie about, actually I wanted to ask all of you generally about acquisition, because with mobile it's very different than a web app in that if you have a web app, you can have Mixpanel, Google Analytics, all these things to know what are people looking at. Looking at my homepage, they're going to pricing, I can heat map, I can see where they went, where they didn't go, where they dropped off. And I can really make like significant changes to my product or the front end of my tool if people are not signing up to improve that. With mobile, you don't get that. With mobile, you throw up like the 5 screenshots you like best, your like 500 words limit copywriting, the keywords that you need to jam in there to show up because you're competing with the same field as everyone else. It's a different beast to when people see you, what do they do? You don't know, you don't have a heat map of where they read your description in the App Store. And even if they download your app, you don't have their information until they sign up. So there's this weird unknown attrition rate of every 100 people that download your apps, maybe 80 actually sign up. And you'll never know anything about those other 20 people, unlike web apps, which is a comfort, something I'm comfortable with, figuring out what to do with the 20 people. You guys can't know. So how do you test? Do you usability test? What do you do to like close that gap as much as possible for the people who download and don't sign up?
We actually use AppSupply, which allows us to do some degree of tracking between install stores and where we sign up. We have a little bit of that. But on the flip side, because we're in healthcare, we can't install FacePanel. We can't plug in anything analytics-wise because it will violate this healthcare rule. Whereby, if you're showing any kind of personal identifiable healthcare information, you're violating this. So we've had to build our own analytics system from the ground up, which is pretty crazy for doesn't like 3 months for the dev team of 4 right now, so it's growing, but it's experimenting right now. Like we've got a pretty good system built. We're just running tests on a kind of weekly basis to figure out what works. We sort of know what works from Facebook installs to Twitter installs to AdWords, that kind of stuff. Like we kind of got a good idea of how well those work and don't work. But in terms of actually getting people reading out, like that's something we're figuring out from scratch.
We use Liquidix to do some kind of like push notification and messaging tests. We're lucky because we're huge scale, though. Like we can test small copy changes, button changes, creative changes. But when you're a small startup, you have to go really big with changes and everything. You just don't have that luxury of to split up your audience as much. But mobile is just difficult. Mobile is just difficult overall. Like there's just no good way. I mean, you can try these out-of-the-box solutions like Optimizely for like code block testing, but we end up building something custom with like feature flags, or you can ship with 3 or 4 different options that you're going to test, and then basically put a value in a feed, and that's it. When you find out, when you figure out the winners from your analytics, you can say, all right, let's roll with number one. But yeah, on web, you can turn the whole sales page on its head, and you'll know in 2 or 3 days the changes you made worked.
Totally. Let's do some Q&A. What are you guys thinking? I unfortunately didn't get to look all you guys up beforehand. You guys building mobile apps, startups in general. Yeah, what questions do you have for these guys?
Are there any must-dos when you first launch your app in terms of getting those first initial early adopters of your platform? Like those 2, 3, 4, 5 things that every person should do when launching a mobile app?
I would interject a really quick opinion, like a hot opinion that I think about all the time, because I test a lot of mobile apps when they just launch. And I'm signing up and trying to. And a mistake I see a lot of people make, and this is a minimal thing, but this is like one that can fit into your like 5 things that you need to do, is when I open a mobile app for the first time after downloading, it's typically optimized for existing users. So like the first screen says login, and there's a tiny link beneath that says if you're new, go here. Or like it has a splash screen, but it's like 9 screens instead of 3, but there's no skip button.
My question was more towards acquisition.
Sure.
Towards like experience.
Sure.
More in regards to how do you get those first users that was over there. Which, a lot of people that launch apps for the first time don't really know where to start. See a lot of apps that go to the app store with a decently built product, but then not much happens after it's launched. Because there's that huge excitement about building the product, and it's like, oh shit, it's going to happen.
There's a big misconception whereby you launch your app, you get some awesome press, and suddenly millions of users are using it from day one. That's the kind of reality we've been sold by all these Silicon Valley TV shows and such like. And I'd say for 90% of that, that's not really the case. It's going to be the first chance you've got users actually using this thing you've like sweated and cried over for the past year, 6 months, however it's going to be. I mean, actually, those first users are going to be key because they've taken that dive. They've read like a TechCrunch article and you went, that's cool, I'm going to download it. So it's not necessarily about getting the biggest numbers, it's about getting those people to stay on the platform.
How'd you get like your first 10 users? Did you have a test app before?
We had it on test like for a little while, so we had like friends and family using it for a little bit, so those guys probably wouldn't really count. I mean, our first users probably press. But we didn't have our own system built at that point, so we didn't have the best information.
And did you have a web presence to promote the app, or did you go just straight into the app store and send everyone to the app?
And we had a website, sure,
Okay.
like generally most links go to the sort of download page on the website, which is this app slide thing where you take the website if you're on desktop, or you take it to the app store if you're mobile.
I think it comes to like, what do you do with your first, 10, 20, 100, 200 users? It's all about monitoring their retention, I think, and that's going to tell you how your product is doing right away, right? Like how do you retain those users week over week? I think to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I launch little projects all the time that aren't real businesses, but I want page views or I want some signups. I just want to see what people think. And the hackiest stuff I found is what works the best. It's the most manual, but it works. So like one hack is you can go on your LinkedIn, go to your connections, you can export all your connections as a CSV. You can then load them up into a Google spreadsheet, get the add-on called Get Under the Mail Merge, it's free, and it will let you email all of them from the spreadsheet in one click. You can say, hey John, hey Sally, hey Mary, can you please download my app? Can you please try it? And like earnest, personalized, plain text, one-to-one requests that you can kind of do at scale with exporting LinkedIn and using mail merge tools can work to get 10, 20, 30 people. That's like a 2% hit rate, and then like you're humming. And then to Matt's point, like make those 20 really happy. And it's like what Ben, the CEO of MailChimp, says, right? It's flip the funnel. You've got traffic and some customers. He's like, no, flip it upside down. Love the few customers you have, and then they build this bullhorn and they tell other people.
Yeah, that's I was trying to come up with an example. Do you know the Skim? So they have this program called Skim Ambassadors, where like it's like their superstar users, and I think like you identified your hardcore users, and like they can be your key to growth, right? Like 92% of people trust word of mouth over everything else. So like if you can figure out what that subset is, the sooner you do that, the better.
That's a good point. Finding out what that subset is, so you can kind of focus there instead of being really broad.
I'll make that feel really important. Even if it's like your CEO once a week writes an email to this little group of people and goes, what do you think? We have this new feature, what do you think of it? Like, make them feel like they're the most important person in the world. And they'll love your product, they'll become ambassadors for your products.
I have a BCC group like that I've had since before I was even in tech. It's called Soundboard on my Gmail contacts. None of the people in the group know who the other people are. I BCC them like once every 4.5 months. Hi friends, here's some interesting idea, and then like they each shit on it or whatever on their own time. But those people, if I needed to turn them on, like download this or do this for a friend or mention this or offer this or whatever, they do it. And that's just like having 20 sort of friends from college. What were you gonna say?
I was just going to ask a different question. How much does sort of your target market or demographic impact the way your app is designed? So for Adam, for example, his target market is primarily young men or whatever. You're focusing more on healthcare. How does that target market shape or impact the way that you design your app?
It's a great question. Look at Waze, look at Snapchat. The first time I downloaded those apps, I was like, what the heck is going on? Why don't I understand this UI? Why did it take me like months to figure out that you can drag your finger from the color palette all the way to the corner to get black and white? Yeah, like in Snapchat. I mean, I think it depends on, when you're drawing in Snapchat, when you change colors, you can drag your finger all the way to the top corner, bottom corner for white and black. There's no reason you can discover it. There's zero discovery unless you read it somewhere. For us, I don't know that we generally, like, we take a very conservative approach, right? We're like a hockey league, we're like run by a bunch,
Just say a bunch of old guys. Whatever you're
Like, I'm a firm believer of, like, that you have to keep the UI familiar with the platform that the user's on, and so if you look at our Android app, it's hamburger menu and those side swipe menus that are at the top, and no, I can't stand it. And you look at iOS, it feels very familiar to what UI tab view looks like everywhere else. That's just my opinion.
So for us, we kind of got to strike this delicate balance between being kind of healthcare, so that's sort of quite sterile and very serious, because you might have some very serious questions, let's face it, but also being kind of an approachable and enjoyable app to use. Like, we don't want to feel like you're opening up a website from the 90s that's all blue and white and horrible to use. It needs to be like something you want to actually pick up when you're not feeling great. But the other main thing we do is it needs to be super simple to book an appointment. As the example earlier, like a mom that's got a kid in her hand, she's not going to want to spend 20 minutes tapping through sub menus. I think you can book an appointment in 5 taps possibly less, I can't remember right now. Like, it's all about making it as simple as possible for the people that are using it. But for us, if you're using it to book an appointment, you're probably not in a great place, so you're not going to want to have to spend all your time figuring out how to do the key action. So simple and clean, easy to use is how we enjoy it.
And design is real work, right? Design should only follow usability. And so just redesigning an app to fit a user is tough because you're still figuring out who your user is if you're starting out. But I found that one shortcut sort of to that, what these guys described, is the positioning. And positioning can be personified as simply as copywriting, right? So like, do you use exclamation marks? Do you use smiley faces or do you not? Can change how people feel about your app. Does it feel sterile? Does it feel fun? Does it feel corporate? And even positioning in the sense of what happens in between the lines. So I was working on a mobile app last year, Uber for shipping, connected truckers to freight. It's like kind of cool, but it's work, right? That's what these guys do for a living. And we were making mistakes left and right. We had like a loading process because we had to ping Google Maps and find loads around them. And while it was loading, we thought, let's do something cool. Let's not just show like the iOS wheel. So we had it say like cranking the engine or something like that, like ... And it's like cranking the engine, like this is a real app. This isn't a game. This isn't a game. This is people's lives. Like they're paying their mortgage with this app. So we had to experiment with that, and that was like a positioning thing that was based on who our user was. We ended up changing it to something more neutral but still playful, which was as it was loading, you'd see like a truck just fly across the screen. So you kind of couldn't blame us on that having any connotation. It was like a silhouette truck. But that ended up being a thing where people were like, do I take this seriously or not? Based on punctuation, based on capitalization, based on the colors, based on all of that. And I would attempt to use mechanisms like that before like design when we think in the sense that we think of design. Because that opens a lot of other doors.
Yeah, I kind of agree, I'll kind of disagree, right?
Sure.
Because I think design is extremely important. Because you see these two sitting here, the juxtaposition, right? Small organization, not big budget, a more personal app, right? Big global behemoth with, you know, millions of followers that die for hockey, right?
We're still.
With huge budgets as well, right? So it's totally different. So you got to figure out who your customer is, what do you want to be when you grow up, and then you start to figure out how to position yourself.
Any thoughts, Adam? Well, I just keep my mouth shut and let my designers do what they do.
What else do you guys think?
I have another question. It's for Susie. Most of the users, like everybody that uses your app, will have an immediate requirements. I'm just wondering how you're tackling when you make your product aware to somebody else, but they don't have the requirements right at the moment. How do you keep your product like top of mind, so whenever they come to that requirement, they'll remember your product and download it again, or if they had it on their phone, like using this.
Excellent question. So one of the biggest things like that could be a barrier to using our product is this immediacy thing. You're not always going to have a question, you're not always going to be sick, you're not always going to need healthcare right there and then. So in addition to video, we actually have this like free forum which you can use. You can quiz questions, you can get answers. Our practitioners are on there; they'll answer it for free. And there's quite interesting discussions on that. You can sort of follow and get responses. So we're not trying to just be this one-off experience. You have an appointment, put down the phone, never touch again. We're trying to really make a community around this as well. Equally, we're trying to create, so there's a Doctor on Demand, I don't know if you heard of them, and Health Tap. They also do telemedicine, where it's very much a kind of transactional. You're sick, you get a prescription, that's it. Whereas a lot of what we're doing in our messaging and the type of practitioners we have is trying to create this kind of ongoing relationship between you and the provider. So you're not just seeing this practitioner once because you had a sinus infection, you're kind of checking in with them once a week, once a month, whatever. It's a pretty general thing, I think, to have something wrong, Google it, immediately you're dying. That's a kind of common experience that I know a lot of women have and probably a lot of men do. So we're trying to be that point of contact where you don't necessarily want to spend an hour sitting in a GP surgery or traveling to try and get an appointment, which probably won't happen in 2 weeks' time or whatever. We want to be that kind of, not sure if this is okay, I can do this in 10 minutes. I can get a real answer from someone that is qualified and give you prescriptions if I need to, right there and then. We want to make it as non-transactional as possible, and you think of Instagram when you see a beautiful scene, you immediately go, I'm going to take a picture of this and put it on my Instagram. We want to be that, is this right, is this normal, should I go to the ER, should I just leave this? We want to be that thing that's first in your mind when you have a question of that type. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. More questions?
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Let's hear it for the panel. Thanks, Ryan, for hosting. Please help us finish the rest of the pizza in here before you head out. But yeah, thanks again. If you guys want more information on branch metrics, you can find us at branch.io, open source developer tool to help you grow your apps. It's really awesome. And look out for us on meetup.com and mobile growth hackers. So thanks again.